Okay, good afternoon once more. Like I said, my name is Priscilla, and I will be taking us on from data to dashboard, how to build an interactive report using Power BI. So for the agenda of today, we have introduction to Power BI, data importation and preparation. Then when we are done importing data, how to model your data after importing it. And also, we'll talk about that the data analysis expression, the two types of that we have in Power BI. And then we'll have data visualization and storytelling. Then we can now talk about design, best practice, and recommendations. So let's look at, first of all, what is Power BI? But before I go into what Power BI is there anyone that is here that this is your first time of hearing about Power BI? I believe every one of us here knows or have used Power BI, in as much as maybe you are not so proficient in it, but at least you have anyone interacted with Power BI interface before? Have you worked on anything using Power BI? Okay, so we are not beginners. At least you can say that we are maybe at intermediate level, right? So Power BI is a business intelligence tool. Just like, we have so many business intelligence tools out there. So it is a business intelligence tool for data analysis and visualization that allows users to create interactive dashboards and reports. So this Power BI is just one of Microsoft products. We have other intelligence tools out there. We have Tableau, we have Apache Superset, Google Looker Studio, we have Metaverse. There are so many of them. But today, we'll be focusing on how to create an interactive report. There's a difference in creating visuals and creating a report, right? So how to use Power BI to generate an interactive report through a storytelling approach. Now, why are we using Power BI? First of all, if you have worked with other business intelligence tools, you will agree with me that Power BI, you can easily integrate it with numerous data sources. Other ones can connect quite all right, but with Power BI, is easier to connect with different types of data sources. If you are connecting with database, if you are connecting to a flat file, if you are connecting to web services, you can easily connect your data source to Power BI. Then we'll have AI-driven insights and easy to use. Microsoft is one organization that I know that they are very, very user-centric. Every time they release updates on just everything about Microsoft is all about making whatever you are doing easier for the user. They are very, very user-focused. So with Power BI now, you can even integrate Copilot, you can do Power Automate. So many things you can do. Those things are AI driven. And even with Power BI, you can create some depending on the version you are using too, and the integrations you have, the settings you have in place. There are a whole lot of things, AI-driven insights you can generate using a Power BI. Then it enables real-time collaborations and sharing. You can share and work together on a Power BI report. Then the key features we'll be talking about today is Power Query for data transformation. We have data modeling tools for creating relationship between tables. Then we'll talk about data analysis expression for advanced calculations. So these are the major things we'll be talking about today on Power BI. Now let's look at data importation and preparation. With what Power BI has, what we have currently in Power BI, you can literally bring in data from different types of sources. You can bring in data from API, you can bring in data from flat files. And when I say flat files, I mean Excel, CSV, PDF. You can bring in data from databases. You talk about Postgres, MongoDB. Then you can bring in data from web services. You have SharePoint Online. We have can bring live data from the web and so on. So you can even integrate with Google Analytics. You have Amazon Redshift and so on. So these are the data sources. Is so unlimited, except if you search for the data source when you go to the importation part. If you can't see the data source you're looking for, you can easily search for it. But one good thing is that although for each importation, you have to do a little bit of what we call background research, because the way you connect to Google Analytics is not going to be how you will connect to Redshift. That won't be how you are going to connect to SharePoint Online. So each connection, when you are trying to bring in data, you have to do a little bit of background research to understand where you are bringing the data from, the structure and the documentations that you follow, the steps you follow to bring in data. So it depends on the type of data you are bringing into Power BI, and that will also determine how you are going to bring in that data set. Then for the best practices, first of all, when you are bringing in data, if you are working for an organization, when you are doing your project, okay, that is your own data set. But when you are working for an organization, you know that subsequently they will be taking in data. So you have to ensure that that your data formats are always consistent. You have to make sure that the columns for date is always in date format. Each data type or each variable must be in the right data format, in as much as at the point of, because when you are bringing in data and you do your data connection, if you bring in a data set that you already set in a date format, and the next one is a date, quite all right, and you don't set in a date format, it's going to disrupt your modeling, even before you even start cleaning it up. So best practice is always ensure that your source is consistent, and also import only necessary data and use appropriate data connection. When you are talking about necessary data, you might go to a database you want to bring in. Don't just go there and pack in every data set you see there. You have to know what you need, right? Which table am I interested in? So the table you need will determine the table you will bring in, right? So don't just bring in all the data sets you see there, but ensure that you are bringing in only what you need for your reports at every point in time. If not, you are going to slow down the time it takes to refresh. You're going to slow down your reporting format. You're going to slow down a lot of things, how the model is working and your connection. So, and also make sure that you are using appropriate data connection. Can we go back to another? Well, this isn't clear. Okay, for data cleaning, you have to ensure that data is accurate, consistent, and complete. When we're talking about data being accurate, being consistent, and completeness, removing duplicates so that you don't skew your reports, right? You have to remove duplicates. You have to change your data formats. Data format is very, very important, making sure that your data or your columns or variables, whichever one you prefer to call it, is in the right data formats. It will help you, it will prevent you from having lots of errors. Because even with Power BI, there's sometimes when you want to create some certain things, you might run into error and it might not give you the desired results. So ensuring that your data, all your data sets is in the right data format is very important. And it's also very important when you are trying to connect, because sometimes you may need to bring in data from different sources. I might be bringing in data from Excel. Okay, let's assume that we are working for an e-commerce firm, and the e-commerce firm, they will have where their let me say their marketing channels, right? Maybe they have social media, Google Analytics, and all that. They are bringing in data from there. Then from their own database, where customers' information are stored, you bring in data from there. So data can come from different sources, right? But ensuring that no matter where the data is coming from, that each particular column or each particular variable in that your data set is in the right format. It will enable you to connect easily, and also for your visuals to be interactive and reduce the number of errors you will have when you start creating videos. So first of all, before you start data cleaning, right? Other type of data cleaning, handling missing values and rest. So before you start any data cleaning, right? Whenever you bring in a data set, you do what we call data profiling. You have to profile your data. to be sure of what you received. You know, when you start cleaning, a lot of things start changing, right? Hello? Yeah. When you start cleaning your data, a lot of things start what? Changing. So you have to first of all profile your data. How did your data come in? How many number of rows? How many number of what? Columns. Do you understand? We call it what we usually refer to it as what? Before and what? After. You have to document your before you start your cleaning and your transformations. Believe me, it is very, very important to document this. And personally, if I receive a data set, I usually, if it is a flat file, before I start cleaning it, maybe if I'm not using Power BI, because you have other tools you work with, right? So if I'm not using Power BI, what I usually do is I make a copy of that data immediately. Because there are cases where you will bring in data and work on it. You can't go back. Yes. So you first of all, make sure you have a file for the main data, the exact data you receive. So for data profiling, you have to ensure that you do what? You profile your data. Please do not forget. Data profiling can save you a whole lot because it is when you have profiled your data and when you are comparing what you have now and how it was. You know, sometimes in analytics and insight, it's not just about creating dashboard. It starts with, okay, this is what you gave me, right? This is where I am at the moment. This is what I have currently. So you can clearly show them that, oh, this is how the data came, right? And this is what I currently have. Or these are the transformations I've done on that data set. Then you have to handle missing data strategically. Handling missing data strategically is very important. And there is no straightforward way of handling missing data. That is the truth. Because first of all, there will be a time you will have missing data. You will decide to drop the column or drop the rows, right? Other times you might do data imputation in terms of using mean, using averages and the rest to impute data. Then there will be a time that this data that is missing, I can't drop it. You have to go back to the source. You are already giving them insights. Just taking the time to examine the data and you can, because there are some key, imagine if you are talking about sales and you go to a sales data, it's recorded in their inventory that the item was sold, but you couldn't find the amount. Do you understand? It's important. So you can go back. If it is an error, you rectify it. So it shows that you are really, really handling the data. You are, first of all, it is in data cleaning that you do what we call fall in love. We usually call it data fall in love. You have to fall in love with your data. You have to embody your data. You have to understand it before you even start working on that data. Personally, when I receive a data set, right, on the project we are working on, you can receive data set from different ministries, but you have to do what we call background research. It doesn't have to, one thing about being a data analyst, a data scientist, it doesn't have to be your field. But wherever you find yourself in, you have to do what? Understand their own use cases. You have to understand the indicators they are using in their own what? Sector. This is the only way you can give them what? You can make informed decisions with their data sets. Are we communicating?
Yes.
Okay, then we have to ensure to remove duplicates. There's usually this mistake that people make. They check duplicates by column. No. You know, if you check duplicate column by column, if you are not checking for, in fact, you have to check for duplicates. You know, when a data set or a row is said to be duplicated, it means that if the row is duplicated, for every variable, every column speaking to that row is the same, right? So I've seen people when they're checking for duplicate, they check row to row. No, they check column to column. Rather, you check what? Row to row. If the entire line is a duplicate, you can drop it, right? But if it is not, so be careful when you are checking for duplicates. You don't just check, you check this column, because some, in the real sense, imagine if a column is about gender. Is gender not supposed to be duplicated then? When you are filling yours, are you not supposed to identify if you are a male or a female, right? But if I have your name, your phone number, and everything duplicated, like I have the same exact information end to end, that is when you call that the particular data what? A duplicate. And then you can then decide to do what? Drop it. Because if you do not drop it, it's going to skew your results. it won't give you the right insights because you have the same information replicated multiple times. Then let's look at data transformation. In data transformation, sometimes people will be like, what is different between data transformation and data cleaning? Transformation is also part of cleaning, but in transformation, you restructure what? The format of your data. When you unpivot a column, that is data transformation, right? When you create calculated columns, that is data what? Transformation. When you merge, right? You split. That is data what? Transformation. And the reason why you do, when you normalize your data, that is also what? Data transformation. In data transformation, you are not really changing the data. You are not bringing something new, right? But rather you are restructuring the format the data came in just for it use. There are some data sets when you receive it, you know that if I put this thing this way, I can't get anything. So you have to do what? Go through that transformation what? Stage to be able to ensure that your data is what? Usable for analysis. Then keep transformation what? Simple. I know you are good, but if I'm going to this junction, this point, right? There are so many ways I can get to this point. My point is, I want to get to that water bottle and permutation. Before we can get here, just walk to this water bottle. All data analysis expression, but they are different and they are used what? Differently. So you have to make sure that at this point in time, am I to create a calculated column or am I to create what? A measure. Then document your transformations. At least Power BI helps us in our documentation because when we go to the transformation stage, that is the Power Query. Each step you implement, you will see it was documented and you can also revoke it. So before we continue, is there any questions? All right, go ahead.
So you used gender as an example.
Yes.
So let's assume that gender cannot be used as a primary key. Let's assume that I have a company, employers in that company. So then we have employees who are supposed to have unique employee ID. So now notice that there are employees that have duplicate value. So now employees ID is going to be a column. I can't have another column with employees ID stated. So I'm going to check duplicate values. Where compare that column.
If when you have a unique identifier, which is what I mentioned now, in checking for duplicates, when you have a unique identifier, you don't need to check the rest. Because you know that no two employees can have the same ID. Do you understand?
I'm saying unique. Like they are duplicated.
What is duplicated?
The employee's ID. It's like you have some employees probably have some kind of repeated details.
No. If you have, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever seen someone with the same name as you?
No, it could be a misname. It could be a misname.
That means it is a system error. But when I go to that your unique identifier, right? For you to have, sorry to say this, but we are in this country. In the real sense, nobody is supposed to have the same NIN as you. It is your unique what? Identifier. Anywhere you go to, no two can have the same NIN.
From that sense. No,
I'm not.
The difference is just picture. Has people very same name, but the difference is just big.
No, I'm talking about same names. NIN is the number.
That's the unique identity.
It's a unique identifier. You can have someone bear your surname, your middle name, your last
Same date of birth.
the same date of birth. I know someone bear the same name, everything. You people are also female, the same month, everything. But that I'm talking about, and I haven't encountered it.
No possible.
So if you are to have to see such, that means the system is so what? Faulty. So to answer your question, you have a unique identifier. Something like employee, I know to employee. So you simply check your duplicates with that. It's a lot. It depends. I wouldn't want to go to the number because I have someone, I've called my own phone and it ran somewhere. Yeah, but I would rather prefer to do for like in a school. Not two schools can have the same ID when you want to check that school out. So you can, if your data has a unique identifier, right? You can use it to check for what? Then if you notice they have duplicates, don't be in a haste to drop it. It's just that it calls your attention that, oh, you need to pay attention to this. You start examining those duplicates. You can even filter it out and then look at them critically. Personally, I'm always in a haste to drop a column. So exactly. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Anyway, use case of well should you know
Okay, so we are getting there. Okay, next column. Next slide. Oh wow, this is not clear. So but we'll still practicalize this, right? So this is when you bring in the Power Query editor. If you have used Excel extensively, you know Excel is a very powerful tool. Yes. Yes, there's so many things you can do with Excel. You can do correlation, you can do regression. That one is a whole system on its own. But on Power Query in Excel is the same Power Query you have in Power BI. So this is just the interface where you bring in data. These are the columns. Then the steps are recorded here, which I just believe that at least all of us, we agree that we have made use of Power BI before. So I wouldn't want us to waste so much time here. Next slide, please. Okay, now let's talk about data modeling. First of all, can anybody tell us what he or she understands by data modeling? Whenever you hear in data modeling, what comes to your mind? If you have made use of data modeling, how did you do it? Anyone?
Relationships.
Relationships. You are trying to establish relationship between tables.
Yeah.
So what do you intend to do with the relationship?
Now, we are trying to kind of bring you a chat eventually. It will be well connected eventually.
Okay, that's actually correct. So it's just the process of defining what? Relationships between different tables to enable efficient analysis. Now, in Power BI, we have three types of relationship, right? We have the one-to-many, we have the many-to-one, and we have the many-to-many. And the last point I put there is to use foreign keys to connect fact and dimension table. Now, let's talk about one-to-many relationship. For the persons that said they have created, they have made use of Power BI, what do you understand by one-to-many relationship? Okay.
What's the main relationship? Like, this situation, just like one person buys so many things, like identity within links is meaningful because one person can have many other ideas.
Exactly. One-to-many relationship, when you have a singular identity, but you have it just like the example he used. A practical example is, let's still use maybe a store, right? If you go to your database for customers database, the first time you register on a platform, first of all, when you go to buy online, you don't register every day. You register once. So the system gives you an ID, right? So anytime you come back, the system will still recognize your ID. Then you know that, but at the same time, they have a product they are selling on their platform. All these products have what? Different IDs, and each product must have what? An ID. So when you go to a website to buy, you as a person, you are purchasing different products with IDs. And apart from that, when you check out, another ID will be generated for you, which is what? The other ID, right? And if I come back, I mistakenly checked out, I paid, I come back again. I repeated the same thing I bought, another ID was generated. So why am I saying this? In one-to-many relationship, maybe this product, you have so many products, but you are just one person buying it. So when I want to connect the sales table to the customer table, right? You know, when you get to the customer table, the customer ID is a unique identifier there. That is the primary key. But when you come to the sales table, you can have one customer repeated so many times. So if I'm moving from customer to sales, I'm good because I know that no two customers can have the same ID on the customer table. And I'm moving from customer to sales. I'm going to use what we call what? One to what? Many relationship. But if the reverse is the case, I'll do what? Many, how your data is, then many to many, right? But when you go back to the customer table, the customer ID becomes what? Thank God, we are all together. So I don't need to talk too much. First of all, that fact is clear, right? So you use your foreign keys to connect to what? To fact and dimension tables. What are we saying? If depending on the type of connection you are doing, if you are doing a schema design, a star schema, or if you are using a snowflake, although sometimes your data might not even be up to that for you to start talking about using a star schema or a snowflake schema. So when we're talking about star schema is at the middle, then it has branches, everybody connecting to it. So the star schema will just stand, and the primary key in the schema will connect to the foreign keys in the other what? Tables. Then for Snowflake is just like branches. You connect to the ones you have already what? Connected. So that is that. Let's go to the next one, please. So for data analysis expression, it is just a formula language for data modeling and analysis that is designed to work with relational data and allows users to create custom calculations and aggregations. Now, custom calculations is when you start talking about, most times calculated columns are calculated in rows. In calculated column, you create a new column altogether. But in a measure, you're talking about what? Aggregates. You are bringing so many things together to create what? A measure. Then when you talk about data analysis expression, it enables dynamic calculations and then aggregations. It supports a wide range of functions, including mathematical, statistical, logical. That is, you can use if, you can use aggregate functions, accounts, summations, averages. You can use mathematical functions and text functions. You can put filter, divide, and so on. So it is used to create measures and calculated columns for enhanced data insights. Now, to the question you asked, I want you to go to the next slide. Let's look at calculated columns and measures, right? Now, for measures, you have the measure name, the function, and the what? Data column, right? But this can be nested. You know what I mean by nesting, right?
Yeah.
So when we have this, you can nest it as so many times as you want just to get your desired result. Then in calculated columns, you are creating a new column entirely. And you have your function name and your arguments. Then for measures are very dynamic. They are dynamic calculations aggregated based on filter context. You bring in this, you bring in that, and then you create an aggregated what? Column. Therefore, calculated columns are done row by row. When you create a calculated column, right? Your results will be recorded what? Row by row. let's say we have the cost of purchasing an item, right? And we have the revenue generated, and you want to check for profits. You simply use your revenue generated, subtract your whatever maybe cost. You have a new column, like speaking to each row. That is a calculated what column. Then, but when you do something like total sales, you are aggregating. Then you now talk about what measures. Now, measures are calculated at query time. You only do it like when you write your measures and you want to use it, that is when it will calculate. Do you understand? At the point where you are using it, when you are using it to query your table. But calculated columns are calculated during data upload and stored what? In the model. That is why they will always tell you that calculated columns add to the size of your data set, because you are creating a new what? Column that is stored. This is not stored. This is calculated at what? Query time. So this is to the size of the data set to the size of your data set. So that's why we said that you should know when to create a measure and when to create what? A calculated column. Now, not stored in the data model, but this is definitely stored in what? In the data model. Then this is used for summarizing data. You calculate total, averages, and the rest. While this is used to derive what? New files from existing columns. Generally, measures are more efficient for large data sets, because if your data set is already large, you already have, depending on your server and what you are using, it can be lagging. It can take time to load, right? Your load time will increase if your data set is already. So imagine adding to it. So this reduces the speed of your model for calculated columns, especially when we are talking about large data sets. Now, all these measures, calculated columns, are what we call derived variables. When they give you a average, right? Able to do what? To do some transformations, perform some aggregations, and you extracted extra insights without even, we are not even started talking about creating charts, right? So measures and calculated columns are what we call what? Derived variables. Whenever they tell you, when we talk about derived variable, it doesn't come with your data. Do you understand? These are the things you got from the data that was given to you. Sometimes you can have a column for date of birth, right? You can from there, you extract age of the people in your data set. Yeah. From there, you can have age group. So the age you extracted is a derived variable, right? The age group you extracted from maybe writing an if statement to copy the ages is also what? A derived variable. So most times the measures you create, the calculated columns you create, they are all what? Derived variable. They are not new. It's just what you extracted from your data, just to enhance your analytics. Are we good to go? Yeah, yeah, sir. Yeah. So have I answered your question on measures and calculated columns?
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's talk about storytelling. I would like us to take some time on storytelling. Anybody can bring data and create a chart, right? But it takes you understanding the data to tell a story with your data. Are we here?
Yes, sir.
It seems some of us are distracted. So when you talk about storytelling with your data, if they give you a data set, right, there are a lot of things that come to play before you talk about telling. Let me tell you the truth, right? Some people will say data analysis is an easy skill. I've had people say, oh no, data analysis is very easy. I said, okay, let me look at what you did. Is there I created charts, I did this, I did that. But when you look at the insight from the data, it's disjointed. They have not done the analytics of it. You just gave them data, they gave you back what? Beautiful what? Charts. So sometimes when I see some visuals, people just like playing with colors. You just do colorful charts, you present it, everything is just looking so colorful. But when we start looking at what are you telling me about this data, that is what sets you what apart. So the difference is in you telling a story, not just a story, but what? A compelling story with your what? Data set. You remember those days when you tell stories? I don't know by that their parents told them stories, tales by. Whenever tales by moonlight, when they tell tales by moonlight, there is always a lesson, right? You don't just tell the story. When they are done telling you, they will not ask you, so what did you learn from this story? That is exactly how storytelling in data is. Now, but this time around, if you are telling a story with your data, you have to tell them your discoveries, right? That this, you are not just going there to say, I did. After discovering it, what next? Your story should be what? Your story should also end in what? Recommendations. Whenever they give you a data set to work on, you bring in the data after doing your documentation, profiling it, cleaning it. Don't rush into what? Into generating visuals. The first thing you do is to sit down and ask yourself, can you leave the door open? It's distracting, please. So the first thing you tell yourself is what? Okay, let me just speak to this before we go to the next one. So for here, we just have bar charts. Another good thing about storytelling in data is that you have to understand what story I'm telling, what data I'm using to tell the story, and what chart fits my what? My data set. So we use bar chart for comparison. When you have categories you want to compare, then you talk about using what? Bar chart. You use pie chart for what? Proportions. And some people, personally, I would say if you are comparing what you want to compare, the proportions you have is more than 5 categories, or let's say 6 categories, please leave pie chart words alone. Because at that point, some of these proportions will no longer be clear. There will be clustered, and your story will just be disjointed. Because first thing about storytelling is that when you are telling a story, the people you are telling the story at a glance, if I'm struggling to see what you are showing me, I will lose interest. Do you understand? If you have to explain and explain when you do the chat, you have to explain and explain and explain before the people, your audience, gets what you are saying. I might zone out before you get to the middle part of it. And what you said earlier won't make sense to me. Right? So for you to tell a story, you have to make sure you are using the right chart format for your words, for your insights. Then we have line chart for trending over what? Time. You want to see what happened in months. You want to see yearly trend, weekly, quarterly, daily trend. Then you talk about what? Line chart, area chart. So before you make use of any charts you see, do a little background check. This type of chart, what can I use it for? It's not just because it's beautiful. Each one has a story it's telling. It is designed to tell a story about a particular what? Insight. So be the next one, please. Sorry, this pie or donut. That's a donut chart, but it's under pie category. Then we have interactivity in Power BI. Before we even talk about interactivity, on this point of storytelling, right? It is important that before you start creating your visuals, your story should be what? Clear. You need to know what you are telling them and how you are telling the story. I think this is supposed to come. Can you Move forward. Okay, please. Okay, yeah. This is supposed to come. So this is what I was speaking to. So when you are telling a story in Power BI, it's not just Power BI, you are using data to tell a story. The first question you ask yourself is what does the data what show? Before you even start talking about what does the data show, which data am I dealing with? Right? And what is the most important thing I want my audience to hear or see what first? Don't keep the most important thing at the last part. Okay, you say, okay, maybe when I conclude. Then you ask yourself, what I'm showing them, does it really what matter? It has to matter to them for you to be able to do what? To showcase it to them. And the thing is, if I'm building a dashboard, right, I need to know my audience. Who is going to see this dashboard? What I will show the CEO is not the same thing the chief executive officer might be interested in. Do you understand? So you also need to do what? Understand your audience. Who is going to see this what? Dashboard. The person that will see this dashboard, what is the data set saying? What is the most important thing about this data set or this insight? And why does it matter to them? Why would they be interested in seeing that? So the next one is drive actionable recommendations. Oh, sorry, I jumped. Then focus on key insights, highlight trends, spot outliers, if any. You know, in handling data, missing data, in data cleaning, you have outliers, right? Whenever you see outlier, it doesn't mean you should drop it or you should break it down. Sometimes outlier can be a great insight too. If you know what an outlier is there anyone that is here that doesn't know the meaning of an outlier? So in handling outliers, sometimes you can do what? Showcase these outliers to them. That usually on the average, I make 10,000 naira a day. Maybe something happened, right? What I usually make in a day is 10,000. And something happened, I made 500,000. Will you say that I didn't make the sales? Is an outlier quite all right? Because when you check the trend of what I usually make. So what outliers usually does is that it makes you to do more, ask questions. You are supposed to start asking what happened here? Why do we have this shootout? Why do we have these guys separate? It can even take you back to your data source. Is it a mistake at the point of data imputation? So is it at the point of data imputation? Do you understand? Is someone manipulating data? You ask what? More questions. Then focus on performance areas. Who is the top performer? Who are the top performers? And who are the what? The least performers. And when you are bringing out, showcasing your insights, right? Don't just bring numbers. You will come and tell me, oh, I have 1,000 business, and so I have 1,000 businesses. What is happening in 1,000 businesses? You can tell me that, oh, these 1,000 businesses. Don't come and say, okay, I have 1,000 businesses, and these 1,000 businesses, 500 are what? Or 525 are active. Instead of you to use, you can have 1,000 businesses. Percentages speak volume. If I tell you, oh, out of these 5,000 businesses, 55% is sticks. It will just 55% of this business are what? Active. Once I say that, I already have at the back of my mind that, oh, 45% are not what? Active. But when you just keep giving people numbers are good, quite all right. But try to do what? Use percentages. Don't just go there and put numbers. When you come, you just give us numbers. You can show me number now, forget it. But it will be hard for me to forget what? Percentages. So percentages, they speak volume when you are talking about your data. So you have to move from what is important first. What do I want to see if you are showing me this data, right? You have to put yourself in your audience shoe. Who are you presenting to? Will determine the type of information you put out and how you put out those words information. Now let's talk about looking at, okay, if I'm talking about sales, I might want to look at the product that are high performing or my top performers. in terms of self-representative? And who are the ones that are not doing well? Do you understand? What can be done? So show them what they want to see. Don't tell me this one did this one did that, and then you are leaving out the most important words, information. So always put out what is needed, the strong ones and also the what? The weak ones. Then structure your story, provide context, build the narrative, and make insights. So why I read it was is that your story should be structured. If I'm talking about sales now, I can tell you that I make total revenue of this and that. Like I should structure my story. If I count one, there's how, if I'm making a presentation on my dashboard, if I'm presenting to you, even without you looking at what I'm saying, you know that I am telling you what a story is. Automatically, you understand my story because I am moving from stage 1 to what? Stage 2. From stage 2. So before you start storytelling in data, what I do is I don't even rush. Visuals are the last thing I do. I craft my story first. I even pen it down. I stage my story. This is what I want to go first. This is the people I want them to go first. Do you understand? Then after this, what is the next one? What follows? Because you know that when you get to visual, that one is easy. Crafting the story is the most important part of it. It is what keeps people interested. Now, that is what will make them to sit down and look at what you're presenting to them. Because they know that, okay, you have something to say. You really fell in love with this data. You worked with this data. So compelling stories will do what? Generate insights for you. Then we have drive actionable recommendations. End the story with actionable insight and provide clear what? Recommendation. It's not like, it's like, oh, if we do this, so maybe. Not at this point. If you are telling me that this is your what? These are your findings. You know, when you have findings, you don't just rush and make recommendations. You investigate your findings. Okay, I realized that this month we have high cases of diarrhea. What are the causes? I will go and do another background check. Okay, this particular month, we made this sale. We had the highest number of sales. What caused it? Was there a promotion? Did we do maybe giveaway? Was there discount? Do you understand? Investigate the causes, the causatives of your insights. That is what will inform your what? Your recommendation. Right? So that you generated this insight. After generating that, because when you are telling me, giving me recommendations, you have to tell me the reason behind your recommendation. We discovered that so and so due to. So that means if we implement A and B, 30% increase in that, we are going to outcome. Do you understand? So your recommendations should be what? Clear, and your story should be what? Have an actionable insight. Please, can you go back to the other one? Then filters. We already know how to implement filters. Is there anyone that doesn't know how to use filters here? So you just use filters to do what? Can be applied at different levels to control the data that appears in the what? Reports. Now, sometimes you can have a lot of missing values. Sometimes you may need to use filters to keep them aside. Sometimes you might want to showcase that, oh, this data is practically empty. Do you know that at the point you receive data and you look at it, you know it's not every data set you can use to generate your sets. Have you seen a data set that when you look at it from now to tomorrow, it's not telling you anything? You keep looking at it, you cannot fathom what is happening. You try to do visual, okay, what is this visual saying? Nothing. It's not about your visual being beautiful and appealing. What is it saying? It's not telling me. So I've had a data set where I had to go back. This is not enough to say anything, right? I can't put this out there because what am I going to tell you people that this has, it doesn't end there. So whenever you bring your data set and you create chart, no, chart is good, but let it be structured and you should have what? A story behind your what? Chart. That is what they want to hear. if they're not looking for graphic designers. It's fine if you can design, it's wonderful, because designing is a different case altogether. And then in your designing, you have allows you, okay, you have sliders, allows you to filter data interactively by selecting values within what? The visuals. Then we have two tips. This provides additional context or details about specific data points without overwhelming your reports. So just know when you need whatever you need. You can also use read through. This enables users to click on a data point and to be taken to a more detailed report. Please go to the next slide. Now let's talk about design best practices and recommendations. First of all, if they give you a data set, maybe it's even a gig, you are not yet working for an organization, but they have their colors, right? One thing about data, you start with asking questions. First of all, you ask questions. What is happening? Why? What do you need? Some people don't even know. Funny enough, some people don't know what they need. We have gone for engagement. I will ask the stakeholder. So he said, well, we don't know yet. And at that point, sometimes you might meet people, they don't even know what they need at all. You are the one that will tell them, okay, this is what you have. Based on the type of whatever you are handling, this is what you are going to need. It might even be a case of you need to start collecting this variable because that is what will give us more insight about it. So sometimes they don't know what they need, right? So you have to be the one to bring what they have and dissect it and be able to get what they need. Then again, each organization has colors they work with, right? They have their brand. Make sure that you are working with their brand. That you like blue does not concern them. Make sure you are not using what you like, but what suits their what? Brand. Some will even tell you they have a design template. Stick to their design template. Because once I see that what you're showing me doesn't even follow guidelines, I've already lost interest. Sure. So you have to look at what? Ensure your font is readable, especially in titles and labels. Don't use capital letter here and go to the other chart and say, oh, this chart design, if I use small letters. First of all, it is not even advisable for your chart titles to be in capital letters. I've seen someone that she just looked at, she said, why are you shouting? I said, why? What do you mean by shouting? Say, you are using capital letters as your titles. It's as if you are screaming. So it's even good for you to do what? But be consistent. That is one. And then we talk about limit the use of different fonts. Don't use
Paloma
here and go to the other side and use black and use Times Roman. Practice when you want to practice. But when you are building a comprehensive report, you need to ensure what? That you limit the use of different words, fonts. Use fonts that align with your organization's branding. So there are some organizations that are very specific about what they put out. Both colors, both fonts, and what? Style. So you have to make sure that you follow their words, their guideline. Then for color palettes, if they don't have, you can stick to 2 to 3 main color palettes. Don't bring in all the colors in the world because you feel, oh, if I combine them, this looks beautiful. It might look beautiful to you, but you also know that some people are colorblind. Yes. So you also put those people in what? Exactly. So I also consider people that are colorblind and you use colors that, if the people you are working for, what you are designing, you are not giving any particular style or standard. You have to do what? Look for colors that can be seen by people that are colorblind. If you are presenting something to me and I can't see it, what is the use? Then now let's talk about use color purposely. In terms of, that anything red, when you talk about red, if I'm doing top performing and something like the least performing, right? Or if I want to do color grading, that red is always associated with people that are not doing well. Something like that. Now, if you are plotting a graph on death, high death cases, go there and use green for them. right? So those negative things that speak to negativity are always attributed to what? Red. Maybe red is your best color. You feel, oh, red is not, it doesn't deserve the type of treatment they're giving it. You want to change it. So if you switch it, I've seen it happen. The story was, he was telling a story, but the people listening were seeing something what? Different. Because of what? Color choice. How he chose his words. He decided to use colors. Then we have layout and spacing. If you watch people that put out designs, when you look for Power BI templates, dashboard templates, you will see layout 2x3, 3x4, 4x4. Do you understand? And another thing is, if you are using something like 3x4, sometimes don't put all your visuals in one page. Rather, create multiple pages and then link them. Use navigation bar to link your words, your visuals, and make it easy for people that are going to make use of it. Sometimes you're not going to be there to explain what you did, right? So people are, maybe you're not even the I've been in a position where after designing everything, telling my story, I was not even the person that presented it. Because at that point, I don't even have the opportunity to be where the insight will be presented. So imagine handing something like that maybe to someone else, and they're not able to easily convey your story and understand what you did. At the end of the day, the type of backlash you will receive doing is what? It's clear. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you.